Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We've got a webinar lined up here, an information student for session for students. So this is career opportunities in business analysis. My name is Scott Bennett. I am the manager of business analysis here at IIBA. We've got a panel of speakers today to help us through this conversation. For those of you who are not familiar with the IIBA, the International Institute of Business Analysis, we've got a large network and certifications. So we've got chapters in 40 different countries around the world. We've got 120 chapters, and we've got a number of volunteers around the world as well. We have a number of certifications, and we will be talking about one of those today. But I'm going to stop sharing my screen here so you can see who we've got here on the panel with us. So I'll have each of our panelists introduce themselves, and then we're going to put a poll up on the screen here in Zoom to understand you, the audience. Just a little bit of a logistics. We do have a chat panel on the side. So if you've got questions, put them in the chat, and we'll address those as we go through. So let's learn about our panelists today. Let's start with Agnieszka. You want to introduce yourself?
Yes, sure. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really happy to be here. My name is Agnieszka Barczyszak. I'm president of IIBA Poland chapter, and that's probably the thing I'm most known about, and I'm really proud of that. But next to that, on my professional side, I'm also a mentor and a trainer for business analysts. So looking forward for the conversation.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Agnieszka. Then we've got John. John's in the London area.
Hey, well, yeah, and I'd echo the point about thanking you for inviting me. It's a pleasure also to be here. So my name's John Wisner. I'm a managing principal at Capco, who are a financial services consultancy, and as Scott said, based in the UK. I lead the BA and process capability, as well as working on projects and delivering myself. And in my spare time, I host a BA Insights podcast and YouTube channel as well to talk to other individuals outside of my financial services community, but definitely inside the global BA community.
That's great. Thanks, John. And then we've also got Tyler. So Tyler and I are both in the Greater Toronto area, so we're in North America. We've purposely got speakers here from various areas of the globe to give you a broader perspective rather than just one certain area. So I'll turn it over to Tyler to introduce himself.
And thanks, Scott. Yes, my name is Tyler Krimmel. As Scott had said, I am in Toronto. My heart is probably not in Toronto, probably out west somewhere, but I'm in Toronto. So my job, I do a couple of things. I lead programs in a college, Brown College, and I've helped to set up and run a number of postgraduate programs specific to the discipline and aligned with the discipline of business analysis. So in the domains of business analysis, product management, data analytics, and health informatics are some of the vocations that I have led the development of programs in, and I continue to teach for. Outside of teaching within the college, I also continue to work in industry. Over the course of the past 10 years, I have helped to establish and lead 2 centers of excellence within Canadian banks, and continue to do consulting work and BA and business architecture type work in organizations outside as well. So that's a bit about my experience. When I'm not doing this work, I'm not trying to think about business analysis that much. So sorry, John, but very cool. I'm glad that you do that. That's great.
Okay, well, thank you all for joining us today. So let's start and understand our participants. So we've got a poll here. I'll put the poll up for you to answer. The question is, where are you in your journey to learn about business analysis? So please choose one of the following, and we'll get the results here to see. That way we can tailor what we're talking about today to the audience as we go through. So we'll give that poll a few seconds there. Why don't we start on our first topic that we're going to talk about today, and that is how to enter the business analysis profession. So when people are thinking about, I want to get into this, and they don't have any background yet, what do you advise people in terms of how they can get into the profession? And I'll start with Agnieszka.
Okay, so what I can start with here is I observed some trends recently that people have or come from different backgrounds. They have very different talents, let's say. So probably the first thing I would advise as a mentor as well, to really see what you're good at and what you want, because business analysis is such a big area. You can really find a lot there for you, and you can do different things there. So it's good to decide what's your path. And another thing I think that also came from the last discussion I have taken with on a conference I've been last week in Prague, that it's more difficult to relearn or unlearn than learn. And I really advise that it's good to start from a very good background, to have some fundamentals to start with, and then test it in your, let's say, work, but to start with something and not to just learn from experience. So I think that's the two things that come to my mind to start with at the beginning.
Okay, sounds good. I'm going to turn over to Tyler. Tyler, what do you see in the education area about how people can start their business analysis profession?
So a few things I'm going to say to that. I think obviously we have a number of people who kind of come to education as a means to find this career. As Agnieszka had just said, I think what's important is that for most people, they kind of, so this is what my experience has been based on the probably at this point thousands of students I've spent time in front of. A number of people tend to find the business analysis discipline once they've begun to work. And it would be kind of interesting to hear how many of you who are attending this are kind of right out of a secondary type education. You know, in Canada, that would be high school, completing something like grade 12, or how many of you, are kind of coming at this almost as a secondary or a third or a fourth or a fifth career. Because in most cases, my experience has been that most cases people are coming at this as at least a second career or beyond. And so again, I think it's important to acknowledge that the pathway to this job in many cases is not always so clear immediately. People oftentimes find it or discover it through their experiences. They start to ask questions, possibly, and I'll say from my experience, we have students who come in to our programs who have a technical background. And so they've been involved in software development or somewhere in the software solution or project or product development life cycles. And so they may have been designers, developers, testers. And the reason they're looking at business analysis or product management or any of these related disciplines is because they start to see these individuals that do this really interesting, modeling type work, conceptualization type work. They start to identify that there's some critical thinking that takes place there, and they're really interested in that. They like the idea of being able to get into a role, or they see that they're actually able to help to support differently organizations and businesses actually make better decisions, as opposed to being at the other side of that. So again, that's some of the individuals that come to this discipline. I find other individuals come in actually from business. They've been in business, they've been in operations. They have a background in accounting, they have a background in audit. We've had individuals who have a background in customer service, and through this, they start to realize that there are things that they do within their existing processes and within their jobs that need to be improved. They look at processes that aren't as good as they should be or could be. And so that becomes kind of a pathway or a trajectory to asking questions to determine, hey, who fixes this? So, I say all of this, and I know I'm kind of taking a bit of time here, and I apologize, Scott, but, I say all of this because I think it's important to acknowledge that probably for most of you, you've come at this from one of these two trajectories, and you've landed in trying to learn a little bit more about this discipline of business analysis. So in saying that, you've actually taken your first step, which I think is really important. You've identified that there is a need. You've identified that there are challenges that exist. And you identify that there is now a job or a discipline which we get the opportunity to try and figure out or start to do that conceptualization, ideation, process improvement, or even technical improvement or technical development type work through a journey. So that is step one. And then, beyond that, how do you actually immerse into this? For a number of students, obviously, looking at program opportunities within academic institutions. This is a great way, and there are a number of academic institutions now globally that offer programs similar to what we do in Toronto. Looking at non-for-profit organizations. And I'll say, you know, in Toronto, I work with a non-for-profit organization called Skills for Change. We actually have developed a number of no-cost bridge programs that allow people an 8 to 10 week long journey to immerse themselves into these programs to attempt to try it. And these are no cost. So a phenomenal opportunity that are publicly funded for individuals to be able to get in and learn a little bit about disciplines or specialized disciplines. We've got one in data analytics. We've got one in health informatics. So two phenomenal opportunities that are no cost. The third option, obviously, is to look at your chapters. And I know that this is one of the areas that we're looking to expand on as well, certainly within Toronto, but realistically around the world, trying to find opportunities for chapters to be able to engage those individuals who are far more interested in learning about getting into this discipline, as opposed to just supporting those who are already immersed in it, who have been doing it for 5 to 7 to 10 years. Everybody has a place. And so I think it's important to acknowledge that there are a couple of ways to get into it. So those are my couple of cents. Hopefully that helps.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that, Tyler. So let's take a look at the poll results. Based on the audience here, we've got 9% that are considering enrolling in full-time university or college program. We've got 32% that are currently enrolled. We've got 17% that are in their first business analysis job. Congratulations to those of you that are in that and starting to get into your career. And we've got 42% that are other. I'd love to learn more a little bit about the other. We don't have a way to dialogue on that, but if you can put a response in the chat, when you say other, can you describe that in a few words? That will help us. So it looks like other than the other, most people are in full-time university or college. So in terms of timing here, we're about 15 minutes in. John, if you don't mind, I'm going to skip you on this first question. Let's jump into just sharing one screen here. This is the education level of what we've done in a global survey. So I'll share my screen here. We can take a look at it together. This is the highest education level of those that were surveyed in last year's response. And this is a global perspective. So 165 countries were represented in this. So you can see 44% have a bachelor's degree, 39% have a master's degree. So that's roughly what we've seen in the global survey. So I hope that provides a little bit of insight on that front as well. So let's move on to our next question. Let's talk about the role of business analysis professionals in driving organizational change. So organizational change, what is a business analysis professional doing? So John, I'm going to start with you on this one.
Okay, so I think first and foremost, I think the business analyst is there to understand what the business is currently doing and the organizations are doing at present. You know, so having a good understanding of what the organization, the different teams, the different departments, the roles within the teams are doing, understanding, you know, what they're not able to do, their issues, their pain points, or understanding from speaking to a lot of the individuals doing the work as to what they perceive to be ways to improve or opportunities to make things quicker, or to make their work more transparent, or to improve the client services. You know, this is all understanding, a baseline understanding that can underpin that organizational change. And when we've got a view of actually what the current process is, those issues, those opportunities, and we start to prioritize those things that are of most importance, the things that will provide most benefit, then actually the BA can then provide a very valued role in drilling into the detail a lot more. So understanding the needs a little bit more, you know, understanding the different perspectives, understanding different requirements that different types of people have, and then switching to more of a solution focus as well, you know. And I would say actually both, you know, like the business and the process and the issues type of business analysis is really interesting. It's a really good way to understand the way that the businesses work and the organizations work and build up relationships. It's not all about the solution, but certainly on the solution side as well, that's a really interesting way to think in a different way, to learn from those that you're working with, such as delivery partners in technology and architecture as well. So really, I think start with the process, really be inquisitive and really just ask questions throughout as to why are you doing this at the moment? Why are the organisation working the way they are? Why can't we do something a little different? And I think
Right.
the perspective that someone coming in new can bring, whether it's new to BA or new to the organisation, is that they typically haven't been doing those processes before on a continual basis. So they can come in with fresh eyes and ask those simple questions. Why are you doing this? And take
Right.
it from there.
Yeah. Yeah, and change is difficult. It's not just about logically doing a change, but we're dealing with people. People have emotions, people have reactions, people have different perspectives. And so some of it's that complexity as well, right? It's the human complexity of working with people, not just to tell them this is what we're doing, but to lead them through that change. Agnieszka, what's your experience in working through change?
Was my experience. Okay, so maybe let me add something to this about because I was doing this speech 2 days ago on an evolving role of business analysis in AI era, and actually when I was preparing for that, I came with let's say late at night during my sleep with this understanding of a change of the role of the BA. And I came that actually as BAs, we are building a story of the change that will sell this change to stakeholders. So I came up with this, that we are building this story, we are using data and our experience, different perspectives to build this story of the change. And this is how we also work, as you mentioned, with people, and that will never be replaced for us. And this is our main role. And I truly believe in that. That we need to navigate through this change, through different perspectives, and to learn from some groups of stakeholders, to teach others, to create this common perspective. And I'm also known from doing lots of things, for example, in the chapter, and to do fast things and to do many different things. And when people get to know me, they are surprised I'm really slow in action. And I also often share that sometimes slower is faster. And I think business analysis also for me about that. It doesn't mean to run fast to the goal. It means to run wisely to the goal. And it means thinking before doing. And it means doing things really with intention, not also only intuition. And this is also for me what means to have some knowledge and some background about how to do business analysis, because many people do business analysis at their work. And I talk with so many people, they don't even know they are using business analysis. They do business analysis. And when we talk further, we discover that we are not so far from each other. We just do different language, use different language to communicate about what we are doing. But what's the difference is that they are doing that intuitively and we are doing that with intention. And that gives you more of self-confidence and gives you more, let's say, you are more conscious about the actions and the pathways of what you are doing. So I think this is what I can add to this topic.
Okay, that's great. Now I'm looking at some of the comments here, and if you're thinking business analysis is a job title, we've got a slide here we're going to show you that will dispel that myth. But there's a comment here. I'm an actuarial consultant specializing in life insurance, but I do a lot of business analysis consulting in the insurance industry. So there's a number of different roles that you can be in and use the business analysis skill. So let me share this diagram with you. It's available on IIBA's website. And it's a wheel, and it's a little bit difficult to read here. I will zoom in on it in a second. But the wheel talks about doing business analysis in the top half of the circle. But then we've got business data analytics, we've got cybersecurity, we've got agile and product ownership, and we've got job titles out here. So let me just zoom in on it so you can read it. This is the top half. So these are sample job titles that you might be doing business analysis in. So it could be a strategy analyst, could be an operations analyst or a systems analyst. Maybe you're an architect. It could be a business analysis team leader, or even an enterprise architect or head of strategy. So there's a number of different roles here where business analysis are skills that you would use. If I go to the bottom half here, these are different areas, data analytics, for example. So business intelligence analyst could be one of those, head of analytics. If we look at cybersecurity, you can be a cybersecurity analyst. In Agile, you could be a Scrum Master, a user experience analyst, Agile delivery lead. So there's a number of different roles here in product ownership as well. So just an illustration of business, it isn't business analyst as in a role. That was 20, 25 years ago. The business analysis is used in a variety of roles for a variety of reasons. So it is somewhat of a universal skill set. So let's move on to our next question here, next subject. Industries and companies seeking business analysis expertise. So I'll open us up to the three of you. What are your thoughts in terms of those industries that are really looking for business analysis right now?
Okay, so I'll take a crack at this.
Okay.
Now, is your question which industries are looking, or what are they looking for in the roles themselves?
No, what industries are looking for? So what are the industries where business analysis is in demand? Be another way to
Okay.
word it.
So I think, okay, and that's fine. So, and again, IIBA probably has just as strong research on this. I can speak to the experience that I know from students who are getting placed, to the organizations that I actively speak with, those organizations that are affiliated with, for example, IIBA within the Toronto area. So in short, I think it's an interesting place right now. To the point that you had just said, there is a need for business analysis to exist everywhere. Pretty well, any organization or industry that is going through some form of transformation, and they all are. Obviously, banking is a big leverager of business analysis competencies, these traditional industries. But there are a lot of industries and sectors that I think are starting to realize the importance and the value of this work without even knowing what the job title is. I can speak to an example of where I am, in doing teaching right now, within the college, within George Brown in Toronto. One of the experiences that I've had is that we've actually had 2 of our graduates in the past 5 years end up getting jobs working as business analysts within George Brown College. And it was, in fact, part of the requirement that existed a number of years ago that I actually helped George Brown start to build and articulate what the job requirement was for business analysis within the institution. And so, the reason for this is that they knew that they had needed a role to be able to evaluate what takes place in terms of the student life cycle, the journey, the engagement that exists in how we build student information systems to manage information, how we are going to manage the use of educational technologies to support that student journey.
Oh, it looks like we might have lost Tyler. Okay, we'll give him a minute there, see if internet connection comes back. John or Agnieszka? Oh, we do have Tyler back.
Oh,
Sorry, Tyler,
sorry.
you
I don't
froze
know
there
if
for a
that.
minute.
Okay. So I don't know where I had kind of jumped off or where I had lost, but in talking about what happens within kind of education, the challenges that we have and the needs for disciplines like business analysis. And I think that what we're going to see is that pretty well all sectors are going to have a need for a job that does this work. Fundamentally, the discipline of business analysis is anchored to research. And what we use in the use and the application of techniques is we look at an organization from various perspectives, whether we look at it from understanding the human, dimension, whether we look at it from understanding the process dimension, the functional dimension, the data dimension, the interfacing. Each of these perspectives are something that we generally use, and we have various models to be able to build from. Every organization that's going to be seeking to change and to evolve in the coming years, if they're not doing it already, is going to need individuals that do this form of work in some way. So
Right.
that's kind of a quick summary, at least, of where the needs are. The needs are everywhere. But to your point, the job title is not always going to be business analyst.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so let's check in with Agnieszka. In Poland, in Europe, what are you observing for industries that are seeking business analysis skills, I guess?
Yeah, so definitely, I think the most obvious thing, and the one that I grew up from, is the IT industry. So this is the one that is always there. But I also see a lot in retail and in aviation. In aviation, I see a lot recently, actually. But I need to say that I agree with Tyler a lot that more and more industries will need BAs because we will have more and more data. And if you look at any statistics, and actually it's growing exponentially, and I believe it will grow more and more. So we will have more data, and we have more information thanks to AI, let's say. But this thanks is, we can elaborate on that, but definitely we will have more different information that we really need some critical thinking, and we need people who will navigate other people from that so that we don't get lost in it, because it's easy. It's easy. And what I observe is that we are getting to some point that there is a need to do something about that. And I truly believe that there is a need to rethink some approaches, yes, to stop and see that maybe we are not going in the right direction, yeah, that the world is changing, and
Right.
and yeah, so this is what I see, and I also believe that what you have showed all these roles, that business analysis is in many different areas. I also work a lot with founders, with Entrepreneurial Women Network in Poland. And also, if they start businesses, they're also very excited about that. So they are in their work, let's say, and they need someone who will help them with structuring that businesses. And this is also the area that I observe will need more and more of BAs. And probably they are also doing that, maybe not calling it this way again.
Right.
Data analysis, security analysis, with big amounts of data coming and being there already. These are the very important topics, and I'm very glad that you mentioned that, Scott, on this circle, because maybe it's not so straightforwardly connected with a role of BA, but there is also cybersecurity analysis and data analysis and data science that you can work more in that areas, which is very, very needed in all artificial intelligence models. There is no AI model without data being properly selected and prepared. Yes, so I see a lot. I see a lot of opportunities. Yes, that's why I'm mentioning it's so important also as a mentor. Again, I will mention that to navigate through what you want and what are your talents and where do you want to be in this profession, because that choice I think is becoming a little bit, difficult at the moment, maybe.
Right. Right. Okay, let's check in with John. John, in the London area, in the clients or the people that you work with, what are you observing in terms of where there's demand for business analysis skills?
I tend to work within financial services, but say that really, I'm not sure there is a single industry out there that shouldn't have any demand for BA skills, because if a business analyst is primarily going to be focused on either internal optimization, internal change, improving processes within the organization, or supporting organizations deliver better products quicker to their clients, as a couple of examples. So therefore, I think most organizations are delivering a product to their clients. Even if we think about sports as an example, right? They're delivering a product to their clients in the form of perhaps better performance, as an example, right?
Right.
So there is probably no industry, I would suggest, that really doesn't have a need for business analysis skills. I think there are almost certainly industries that or organizations of industries that really don't recognize or appreciate the business analysis skill set is actually what they need to fulfill some of their needs sometimes. I think that is certainly the case. I mean, even within those traditional sectors like technology, IT, financial services, whilst there's a whole big raft of organisations that will absolutely appreciate the transformation benefit, the roles within transformation, not just business analysts. There are certainly individuals that work within some of those organizations that maybe don't appreciate the change process as they could, because like business analysts, they might not have been leading parts of the organization before. They might have been doing a job on the line, working as an expert in a particular area, maybe not thinking too much at that time about technology, change, business analysis, process, and I think there's always an opportunity for individual BAs or individuals, let's call them individuals rather than BAs, to look into the organization they're in and think, this organization be changed, can they benefit from some of my help? And actually, if the is yes, and it probably will be yes, is there an opportunity for you as an individual to either apply some of those skills you learned through bodies like the IIBA, or learn from others that are already engaged in some of that change?
Right. Okay. So what I'm hearing is everybody needs business analysis. And that's a good story to hear. So we've got a lot of students that are here going through programs. The consensus here is there's lots of opportunity out there. So part of the challenge will be connecting with that opportunity. I'm just catching up on a few comments here in the discussion. Ayushma says she's preparing for the ECBA certification. So we will talk about that certification in a minute, but that's a good thing to prepare you for career. There's also a question right at the start, if joining IIBA would help with immigrating to Canada. I'm not qualified to answer a question like that. I'm not sure if anyone here is, but I would recommend checking into the authorities to see if you're looking to immigrate, if something like engaging in IIBA would help in that. So sorry, don't have an answer for you on that one. Okay, so let's move on to the next part. What are the critical skills for success in today's business landscape? Now, Agnieszka, when we were talking about this last week, you had recommended we pull up the business analysis competency model. So why don't I pull that up on the screen and we can talk a little bit about that. Sorry, let me just get it up here. So this is available on IIBA's website, and Agnieszka, I'll hand it over to you.
Okay, so yeah, definitely this is one of my favorite pictures on IIBA webpage, and I also shared that 2 days ago on my speech. And actually, what I was sharing is that it connects somehow the structures or the processes, what need to be done, and the techniques, which is in knowledge areas, with competencies, with who you are as a person, and that gives some kind of a flavor to what you are doing. Yes, so the tasks are not probably the same for all of us, but the competencies give this difference to whether you are on general awareness or the strategist. And that's why I love to work with people and on their competencies. And then what I also share a lot is that there is a lot about interaction skills, about communication skills, about behavioral characteristics. Ethics is one of my favorite, because as a BA, you have sometimes this amount of knowledge from stakeholders that no other group of stakeholder has. So you are somewhere in the middle, and how you navigate with that, it is very important what you do with this knowledge later on. So I think this is how I see. I don't know, Scott, what else you would like me to share, but definitely looking through this competency model, checking your skills and being aware of how many of them there are. Because when I started, I thought this is only about knowing techniques and how to do this. And then I discovered there's so much more to do. And when I started to learn for being a trainer, a mentor, and there are a lot of different competencies and methodologies about how to teach, how to learn, how to ask questions. There are also competencies that are very important for a BA. So I'm also a big fan of learning also from other disciplines and bringing them to a BA background.
Yeah, I think this illustration is good from the idea of the knowledge areas are things that you need to know about business analysis. but they're very different than the competencies, the tools that you need to know. Your personal interaction skills, for example, contribute significantly to your success in the business analysis profession. So there are a number of different things here, how well you communicate, behavior characteristics, that type of thing, as part of the career. And on this
I think,
diagram,
Scott,
yep, go ahead, John.
sorry, Scott, I was going to say, I mean, I think as well, this provides like a really good window into a lot more skills that actually exist beneath this. I mean, like, so interaction skills, if we take as an example, that's just a placeholder there for loads of other skills that also sit beneath it. You know, there's loads that BAs or prospective BAs could do to enhance their listening skills, you know, their communication skills. I think taking an interest in people actually is something that will probably sit underneath that, and actually, you know, learning to engage people, you know, and actively take an interest in what they're doing, what they need, their opinions and their perspectives.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. What I was going to say is the techniques is just a little item down here, but there are a whole bunch of techniques that are used in the business analysis profession. I wouldn't want to guess at the number that are documented in the business analysis body of knowledge, but there are a lot. So this diagram doesn't really cover that, but you can at least get a little bit of an idea of what the landscape looks like. Tyler, any other thoughts that you wanted to add to what are those skills that people need to work in the profession?
I think there's 50 techniques, right? At least documented in the BABOK. But it doesn't matter. It's not on the test, don't worry. It's all right. But when it comes to that, so you know what I'll say is this: I do think that what's in the BABOK. So I'm going to say, here's how I'm going to present this. The BABOK is a pretty dense guide. For those of you who have looked at it, who are studying for it, there is a lot to it. And if you've not done business analysis before, I think it's important to understand that when you first read it, it is likely going to be an intimidating read. I think for a lot of the students that I've had who have gone through it for the first time, or they try and read it before they come to classes without a lot of context, they tend to read it and are asking more questions and generally are feeling a little bit more confused about this discipline after they read it than they started with. They understand the language of it, but they don't understand necessarily the workflow of the discipline of business analysis. And I think it's important to acknowledge that the BABOK doesn't generally speak to how you do this work. It speaks to an overarching general framework around the work that needs to be done, but it doesn't necessarily dictate the how. And so in saying that, really important to understand that for those of you that are entering this career, it's good to know the BABOK, but you don't need to know all of it. One of the things that's going to be really important for you to understand is as you're starting to apply for jobs, to try and figure out what it is that the job is asking of you within this discipline. Chances are, if you're applying for jobs that are junior or even intermediate level business analyst positions, chances are you are going to be working in an organization. If it's a larger organization, I'll start with that. If it's a larger, more mature organization, I know, John, you work with financial services, so this would be a great example of what happens in financial services. As a junior or intermediate level business analyst, you may be writing requirements. You may be conducting elicitation. You may be documenting, but you're not going to be using all 50 of those techniques. You may be using a handful of them. Chances are you're not going to be the one who's doing all of the discovery of current state processes. Chances are somebody else has already done that. You may be making updates to them. You may be changing them. You might be making changes to a data dictionary. You may be changing the definition that exists within rules and conducting rules analysis. So I think it is important to understand that when you start your career, you're probably working on smaller initiatives, smaller changes, really looking at where the impact of change exists at the technology level. As your career matures, you're going to start to look at understanding how business processes at a larger level start to roll out and impact change across the technology layers. So now if you're making changes across multiple systems, what do those requirements look like? If you have to develop something like a use case specification or even an essential use case, what does that look like? If you start to need to understand how information is interfacing across systems, you'll start to develop appropriate models for that. And as you mature in your career, you're going to see that that picture that was depicted, you start to leverage more and more competencies, techniques, and tools from across that entire discipline, as well as simply working on larger initiatives and actually taking a more senior or possibly even leadership role within teams or even helping to coordinate other business analysts. But again, I just want to stress that really at the onset of your career, for those of you who are getting into this discipline for the first time, it is an intimidating body of knowledge. There is a lot of content in there. Part of your job is to kind of reconcile what's in that body of knowledge with what the actual expectation of job is, because those two things are not necessarily the same. And don't think you have to go into a job and start immediately building a business model canvas to try and support an entire technology change or a technology transformation. That will not be expected of you. And I'll say if it is, you may want to start looking for another job. So
Yeah, that's a really good
If I
point,
could
Tyler.
add,
And I think,
if
go
I
ahead,
could
John.
add something as well, I mean, I think, I totally agree. I mean, there's loads of skills out there that anybody can learn and develop and loads of competencies, but every individual has skills before they're looking for a role. Okay. So definitely think about what your individual existing skill set is already. Are you already a good listener, a good communicator? Do you have a great attention to detail? Are you artistic, creative? Loads of things, right? Yeah. And actually have some thought about what you bring and what's positive about you before you appraise the skill sets needed from a BA perspective, because then you can recognize actually you're already bringing things that align, and then you can have probably a more focused conversation about how you can add benefit to the role, to the organization, and build upon things.
Yeah.
And actually, just to add to that, sorry, Scott, before you say that, John, you made a really good point, and I'll just say this. It's funny and it's simple and it's obvious, but likability is actually a skill too. And so to John's point, just knowing yourself and being comfortable and confident in who you are through the hiring process is really important, because at the end of the day, as an organization, as a company, if we're hiring managers, we're hiring you as a person. The question is, do we want to work with you tomorrow, next week? Are we willing to kind of spend that time in engaging with you? So, to John's point, knowing yourself, having that background, having a bit of a story is just as important as having the technical skills. In fact, I'm going to say teaching you the technical skills is probably easier than hiring somebody who we actually want to work with. That's a really important point as well. So
Yeah, very good point. So let's jump into talking about how do you get that first job. So I'm going to share on my screen something about the ECBA certification, because I've got a little bit of a story to tell with this one. So our ECBA certification is called the Entry Certificate to Business Analysis. So IIBA has put this together so that people can work on the certification to understand the language of business analysis. What this does is allows you to demonstrate that you've got a certain level of understanding. So if you're not necessarily going through a program that's designed for this, this is a certification that you can put in front of employers. And we've actually got every 2 weeks, I host Business Analysis Live, which is a live stream with Susan Moore. The two of us talk about business analysis. And this is one episode. You can scan the QR code to get to it. It's on YouTube and podcast platforms. And we talked to someone that had reached out to me before they got their first job. So they were in the exact position that a lot of you are in that they were looking for a job, reached out to me and said, you know what, I've been applying to all these jobs and I'm just not getting an interview. So I said, send me your resume and I'll take a look. So I looked at his resume and it was a one-pager. And at the very bottom in small type said ECBA certified. And I said, I have a suggestion for you. Take that ECBA logo, pop it in the top right-hand side of the screen, make that the call to action, make that the first thing employers see. He had 3 job interviews within the next couple of weeks, and he started his first job. So this podcast here is about his experience in his first job. So he's 18 months into his job. We talked to him frankly about how did you get into it, what was your education, that type of thing. So take a listen. You might enjoy that. So I thought I'd put that out there, the ECBA certification. So let's talk about landing that first job. There's probably a lot of people here that are thinking ahead to, okay, when I'm done my education, how do I land that first job? So what do you guys think in terms of someone has some experience, some credentials? How do I get someone's attention to get an interview? That's your first objective. And then how do I get through that interview to get the job? John, you mentioned this a little bit, so I'm going to pick on you to start answering this particular one. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think probably the window onto between you and the employer in the first instance is probably your CV or your resume, or your LinkedIn profile. So I would probably, echo the point you made a little while ago, Scott, about putting the most important things that are on that CV towards the top. Don't make it hard for people to find the good things about you. Realize as well that a big part of the BA role is communicating effectively. And if your CV is not able to convey your skill set or experience in a way that you would agree with, then probably you need to change your CV a little bit. I mean, beyond that, as long as it says what you believe is the high priority things about you, you put the highest priority things at the top, of course. And you've got all of your appropriate skills and your experience on the CV, then to an extent, it comes down then to a little bit of luck as well, that your employer will or potential employer will pick your CV out of the pile.
Okay. Tyler, Agnieszka, any other recommendations, thoughts on how to get that interview?
What I can add, and from my experience, is that I would like to see as a person who's hiring, who's searching for people, from your CV that you really know what this profession is all about. Because sometimes to highlight the skills, that's why maybe this competencies model is so important to me, because highlight these competencies that are important in the role that you're applying to. And I'm a big fan of ECBA because I think that gives opportunity also for people to stand out from the crowd of other people who would like to be BAs. And for sure, if I'm choosing from a person who has certification, that's proving at least that the person knows the fundamentals, the language, yes, we and can talk with other BAs. From the person that doesn't have, that probably the choice will be towards someone who already who put some effort to that. And who can highlight the importance or the skills that are important in this profession.
And I guess I'll jump in as well, Scott, just very quickly. And I'll say, I think totally agree with what's been said. Tying back to something that actually John had said in the last point as well, which I think is important. And Agnieszka, you're getting to that as well. The idea that, we all come in with past experience. So my first suggestion would be, when it comes to searching for a job, and I find students, and I see students do this all the time, they kind of take take your pasta, throw it against the wall, and see what sticks approach. And so, students applying for hundreds of random jobs without much of a strategy. I think part of your success in getting a job in this discipline for the first time goes back to what I was saying at the beginning. You all come from somewhere, you've all done something likely. If you have a background that is in finance, if it's in accounting, if you've worked in a bank as a customer service representative, within a physical branch location, if you've worked, I see somebody has put commentary down, in a sales type position, if you understand how sales works within a context such as retail or that environment, that's actually a really important starting point, because ultimately what that says to you and what that you should be able to relate to the employer is that even if you're applying for your first BA job, you understand the discipline of business analysis, you understand the techniques, you understand what the needs are, but more importantly, I'm going to suggest you understand the context of the environment in which you're trying to apply those skills. again, you know, it is a lot easier to teach somebody business analysis techniques, teaching you how to build process maps, teaching you how to write user stories and you know, create acceptance criteria. Far easier to do that than it is to teach somebody the value chain of a retail center or a retail organization, or understand how manufacturing processes work, or understand how the financial system works contextually within an environment like for us in Canada. So if you come in with that background, you know the processes, the value chain, the capabilities, even if you understand the technologies, that's actually a far more valuable starting point than you may realize, because you have a lot more knowledge than somebody who's going into those environments that may have kind of deep business analysis skills, but doesn't necessarily know the context. So I think it's important to understand how you position what you know going into these jobs and into these roles.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Tyler. And that question that did come up, someone who's got sales experience, how do I get into a BA role given that? John, you had actually chimed in the conversation there. Do you want to expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, so I think it just goes back to understanding the skills that you already have. And I mean, I think most salespeople have that ability to spot opportunities, i.e., is there something that my client or customer needs? You know, they have that ability to build a relationship with that customer. So the customer would come to them and ask them for help. As some examples. So I think there's probably loads of other examples that probably the person who come up with a question probably could add more to me. But it's just about taking a little bit of time to think about what is it that I already possess. You know, how can I take these transferable skills and apply them in a slightly different way?
Yeah.
And,
yeah, and we had talked in our
oh, sorry, Scott. I'll just jump in. Just give me 10 seconds, 20 seconds to say this.
No problem.
I did have a student who about 12 years ago ended up getting a job for a consulting company as his first business analyst job, because his background was in customer service. He was actually he was taking customer service phone calls, but in many cases he was dealing with really upset and difficult clients. He was able to relate his experience in dealing in a call center and customer service with angry, upset clients with his ability to address needs with difficult stakeholders. And that's what actually got him the job over people who had business analyst experience for this small consulting company.
Wow, that's a great story. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. So when we had met last week, we also talked about internships might be a way to also get into a job. So if you're placed in an organization where you're there for a period of time, they may see how you operate and you may turn that into a job. Just to let you know, there is IIBA has a career center. And in that career center, you can post your resume. You can identify yourself that you're interested in internships, for example. So that could be an avenue there. There is a free resume review with the service. So there's a QR code there. If that's something that interests you, you can learn more about that at IIBA's Career Center. So I think that pretty much touches all the topics that we wanted to chat about today. Why don't we just do a round table to see if there's any other advice that you'd give the audience in terms of their career, preparing for the career, learning about the career. Agnieszka, I'll start with you.
So I think just to sum up this conversation, I would say that plan strategically if you are looking for a new job. So for a first job, maybe in a BA, so exactly what was said, that go for this competency model, understand the role, see what you have, value what you have, what can be needed. And actually, I would also say from my perspective, and I see that every issue comes always to three main questions: who you are, what you want, where you're going, and actually what's your intention. And I would really search for that first before doing anything, because once you understand what you want, really it's easier. And I have seen that in my working with my mentees, that it really works like that. So, and they're changing jobs, even in the hard times we have now in Poland, for example, that if they know what they want, they show that in their CV, they show the understanding of what they want, they want, and what they want from the job. It may work. So that increases the chances, definitely.
Okay, great. I'll turn over to Tyler. Any final words of advice, Tyler?
You know what? I'll say this, everybody wants to get into the discipline of business analysis. The way you do it is actually using business analysis skills. Think about the journey that you're on. You're in a current state, you're looking to transition into a future state. What does that look like? What's the delta between where you are and where you want to be? What are your requirements? What are the needs of the skills that you're trying to sell to the industry that has those needs? What's working, what's not? And kind of use this as an opportunity to refine these business analyst skills and competencies for yourself as well. I know it's a bit of a meta statement, but it's actually the truth. In a lot of cases, again, I've seen that students want to learn how to do this job, but again, they don't apply the principles, the practices in how they go to look for the job. So this is actually an opportunity to use yourself as a bit of a case study through this journey. So that's going to be my commentary and my feedback to all of you, and my hope for the best of luck for everybody who's on this call in your journey.
Well said, Tyler. Thank you for that. Last but not least, John, any final words of wisdom for the group?
I would just say, just spend some time building and leveraging your network as well, because as you start to identify other role models that are existing in the world of BA or otherwise, they're often good people to learn from, good people to take away some skills and really make the way that they act the way you act if it's successful. But also they might be able to give you an opportunity that exists at their organization as well, I would say. So I think that's probably all I'd add.
Okay, well, thank you,
Sorry,
John.
Scott, I need to add here because, John, that was so valuable about networking and we missed that somehow. And I would add the value of community. That is so helpful here also to either support and to give inspiration. So that's definitely something to add.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. Well, thank you, everyone, for your participation today, the audience and our panelists today. I think this has been a valuable discussion. IIBA does have a student membership for those of you who are interested in the resources IIBA has to offer. And I hope you found this useful. Check out some of our business analysis live recordings. They're on YouTube. There are some various topics there that can help you in your career, starting stages, interviews, that type of thing. But thank you, Agnieszka. Thank you, John. And thank you, Tyler, for your time today. Appreciate the wealth of experience you've shared with us.
Yeah, thanks for having us on, Scott.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Scott, and the best of luck to everybody.
Yeah.
Take care.
Bye.